morning. My name is Vicki, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the CA Mainframe Security Global User Community Webcast conference call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. Mr. Carlos Mendez, you may begin your conference.
Thank you, Vicki. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the CA Mainframe Security Global User Community. Today we'll have a presentation on LDAP presented by Mitchell Rozonkiewiecz, and we'll follow that up with a Q&A session after the presentation. However, if you do happen to think of a question, and we do have a Q&A section on the presentation window, so you can queue up your question in that area. I just also want to mention that not to use the chat area. That really just only goes to our CA support team and may or may not be seen on the presenters page, so I'd rather avoid any distractions. So please use the Q&A section. And welcome, Mitch, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Carlos. Today we're going to be talking about the LDAP and DSi servers. The main focus is on LDAP. There will be some quick mentions of DSi just so that you're aware of them. The page down, go to the next page. So we'll be talking about LDAP, what can it do, can it be secured. As I said, we'll briefly touch on the DSi server. If you do have any follow-up questions that you don't want to do in Q&A, or you feel are specific to your environment, please feel free to send me an email, and I can either reply to you or we can set up a conference call to go over any questions you might have. So what are we going to be covering today? We're going to cover what is the LDAP server, what's it really do for you, the types of data that you can access, both in ACF2 and top secret. Is LDAP a search only, or can I actually update the data I send? And can I use LDAP to actually send changes from the mainframe out to other platforms? And then we'll briefly talk about the DSi server. So first, what is the LDAP server? LDAP is a TCP/IP-based server that provides inbound queries as well as update capabilities to the data that's stored inside your ACF2 and top secret security databases. It does this using an open standard referred to as the LDAP protocol. And since neither ACF2 or top secret are really X500 directories, they're true security products, you can't just store anything you want inside them, but you can access and maintain any of the security data inside of them, almost, and we'll talk specifics in a few more slides. The LDAP protocol is not a security protocol, so there are some limitations in what it normally provides. So for example, with logons, when you do a rack route verify on the mainframe, you get multiple return codes back to tell you whether it's a bad user ID, an expired password, is it about to expire, things like that. With the LDAP protocol, you either get a success or a failure as part of a bind. So we'll talk about ways that you can get more use out of LDAP and or potentially use DSi in your applications to get additional functionality. A couple things that I'll use throughout the pres today I refer to as LDAP lingo are object class. An object class is basically a record definition. It's an object inside the security file. So in ACF2, a lid is a object, or a ACID in top secret, or a permission or a profile. Those are all objects that have an object class that define what fields are required or what are called must, and what fields are optional or mays when you're adding a new option or modifying something. There's also what's called an attribute. These are the individual fields that the object class is made up of. As part of the defining the attributes, you determine what the data type is. Are they case sensitive or single multi-valued? An example of some of the different types of attributes you can have within a LDAP server are directory string, IA5 string. Directory string allows any character. An IA5 string means it has to be A to Z, 0 to 9, basically. Integer data, JPEG photos, or a DN, a distinguished name. There are others, and again, if you've got questions about a particular type, we can go over that later. And last is the DIT, or directory information tree. This is the hierarchy of the objects within the repository. Within a true X500 directory, you can put any object anywhere in the hierarchy. There's really nothing that stops you from having objects all over. And with ACF2 and Top Secret, because the databases are very fixed as to how the records interrelate and how you add a permission to a user in Top Secret, or you add an ACF2 rule, we've created the DIT for ACF2 and Top Secret and documented it in our guides to show exactly how all the objects interrelate and how to access them using either utilities or programmatically. Next. So the LDAP server itself runs on the mainframe in Unix system services and is accessed via TCP/IP by your application. That TCP/IP access can be secured with SSL, and LDAP behind it has what we refer to as backends. These are the interfaces that take the LDAP request that the server receives, turns it into native commands, and interoperates with ACF2, Top Secret, or DB2, for example. So on one of the other slides, I said that, using ACF2 and Top Secret, you can't just store anything, right? It's security data only. Well, with the DB2 backend, it gives you the option to store non-security objects. So we have a couple of customers that use this, and as part of that, they've defined their own DIT, their own directory tree, and the objects and attributes that they're made up of, they get stored in that repository. So using LDAP, they can intermix data from the DB2 as well as ACF2 or Top Secret databases and expose that to their application. All the SSL operations use IBM System SSL that comes with your system, which gives you full support for all hardware cryptography and the performance of using hardware, and it also gives you full FIPS support if FIPS is an issue for you. The way that LDAP actually interacts with the security products is through a USS callable service called radmin. And so when LDAP receives the request from your application, it will, in the back end, turn that into the native ACF2 or Top Secret command and pass it through the radmin interface to ACF2 and Top Secret to execute. In this way, it's no different than issuing a command at a TSO prompt. The security product will enforce all scoping that you currently have in place. At no time does LDAP ever interact directly with the security database and allow access to data that you wouldn't have access to or that you would have access to in a TSO environment. And as part of this, in accessing the security products directly, at no time does LDAP ever have a copy of the data behind it to maintain or sync with any of the changes that are actually occurring within the security product. Since we're going through our admin and issuing commands native to ACF2 and Top Secret, everything that we do is limited to what ACF2 and Top Secret support at a TSO prompt. So even though LDAP can support things like ands and ors and nots, if the native ACF2 and Top Secret commands don't support it, LDAP can't take advantage of it. So when you're sending in search filters to LDAP to turn into native commands, it always helps to understand that passing in parms that turn into Top Secret list ACID prefix, or ACF2 list like and a value. It's always good to use those values to make the LDAP server perform optimally and return a subset of results, and so it doesn't have to process the entire security database. Being a mainframe application, LDAP installs just like any other app using SMP, and it installs into ZFS or HFS, right, whatever you're currently using. And when you install LDAP, it actually installs both LDAP and the DSi server. And so you have the modules there, and depending on what server you're interested in using is which one you start. There's no need or requirement to start the DSi server unless you actually want it. As part of the install process, we provide sample jobs to define the started task IDs, as well as sample procs to use in the startup of the applications. LDAP also fully supports MSM, or now called CSM, to install, deploy, and configure the servers. So why use LDAP, right? What's the value of it? How does it help you? Well, right now today, in order to interact with any of the security products, everything really has to be product agnostic. It has to know all the individual commands, the differences between them, and how to perform work with the security product. What we've done with LDAP is we provide that as part of that back end that I was showing earlier that turns the LDAP operations, a add, a modify, delete, search, whatever it may be, into the native commands. So we do all that work for you, allowing the applications really to be product agnostic, almost, right? There are some differences between the security products. So even though the LDAP protocol is a standard, applications do need to understand schema to some extent. So for example here, I've got ACF2 and Top Secret use the same attribute for the password field, user password, but Microsoft's Active Directory uses something called UniPWD. So at least with the security products, the LDAP server tries to hide as much of that as possible using the same attribute names, just on different objects, in order to allow your applications to interact, perform the maintenance that's needed without having to be as cognizant as to what's running behind the scenes. Another thing LDAP will provide automatically for you is failover support. As part of setting up applications when they interact with the LDAP server, one of the functions that you call inside your application to tell the app where to connect, the IP and port address, is you can supply multiple URLs, multiple resource locators, and the LDAP protocol will actually try them in sequence until it finds a server that will respond to that request. And in that way, as you are IPLing your systems, applying maintenance, starting and stopping servers across multiple LPARs, your application always can find a server to connect to and run. You don't have to worry about a single point of failure. So what are some of the applications that use LDAP today? Well, probably one of the most commonly used applications is referred to as onboarding. It's where you're doing maintenance of user IDs as part of a new employee coming into or leaving your company. And many identity management systems, whether it's from CA or other vendors, actually use the LDAP protocol to interact with servers on the mainframe with all three security products in order to add users, add profiles or roles, and then connect those users and profiles or users and roles in order to give them access to different systems. CA's own distributed security products integrate through this LDAP server that comes with ACF2 and Top Secret. Just a couple that most commonly used are Identity Manager, CloudMinder, eTrust Access Control, and a SDK called EEM. All of those products, at a minimum, can integrate and use the IDs and passwords that you have on your mainframe as part of a single sign-on process or a single identity inside the enterprise. And it's not just IDs and passwords, it's also passphrases. Right? So and I know that other identity manager products have also worked with us. We've worked with clients using WebSphere to do authentication through LDAP to the security product, as well as pulling out top secret profiles or ACF2 roles to set up permissions within WebSphere as to what applications users can use. Another one of our newer applications, CA Chorus, also uses the LDAP server now. As part of the last release of Chorus of the security discipline, in the Chorus Investigator, while looking at users and all their attributes, you can actually go into an edit mode, make the changes, and apply those to ACF2 or Top Secret. Behind the scenes, that UI is actually going through the LDAP server, issuing LDAP modify or delete operations as appropriate to make those changes. The user is currently logged into Chorus is the ID that is logged on to LDAP in order to issue the modify and delete. Remember, one of the things I said before, LDAP is always executing commands within the context of the logged on user. So we ensure that we're not using any proxy IDs or anything like that for a couple of reasons. One is scoping, and the other big thing is auditing. If you're using proxy IDs, it's very hard to audit who did what. So we ensure to maintain the logged on user as part of all the operations. I talked about the types of data that can be accessed inside ACF2 and Top Secret. I made the comment that basically everything can be accessed. Right now, there's only two things in ACF2 that cannot be accessed through LDAP. One is digital certificates, and the other is compiled user profile records. Not compiler, but compiled. All the non-compiled profile records are available, like the OMVS record, for example. And in Top Secret, only digital certificates are not accessible. All other types of objects in ACF2 and Top Secret are fully searchable and maintainable, so you can add them, modify, or delete. In the LDAP server product guide, documents the directory information tree and all the objects and attributes that they're made up of and how they interrelate in order to build the appropriate search, add, modify, or delete operands and issue them to ACF2 and Top Secret. As far as what LDAP operations do we support all the operations bind, unbind, these are equivalent to a TSO login and log out. So behind the scenes, the LDAP server is actually issuing rack route verify, create, verify, delete commands to validate that the user, A, is authorized to actually use the LDAP server, and then B, that login, that security AC, is subsequently used for all other operations to ensure the scoping. An LDAP add maps to an ACF2 insert command, for example, or top secret create or admin. Delete, pretty straightforward. Modify, that'll turn into an ACF2 change. And in top secret, depending on what you're doing, it could be a top secret replace, remove, or de-admin. Mod RDN, this actually only applies to top secret. Objects inside ACF2 cannot be renamed or moved. Top secret does have a move command for ACIDs that this maps to and turns into a top secret move command. And LDAP searches will turn into ACF2 or top secret list commands, as well as like a top secret who has, things like that behind the scenes to find and return the data that you're searching for. All these operations are inbound to the LDAP server, right? The LDAP server cannot be used to send outbound LDAP operations. So if I wanted to make a change in ACF2 or top secret and have it sent to some other repository, that is not done directly with the LDAP server. We will come back to that in a little bit to explain how you can actually accomplish that today with the security products. A key component of being able to access your data in ACF2 and top secret is being able to support dynamic schema. And what I mean by that is the user-defined fields that are in ACF2 and top secret. When we ship the security products, our clients, you, have the ability to extend what fields, what attributes are kept as part of users. So in top secret through the FDT and with ACF2 through the FDR, I can add additional fields to the lid and ACID records that you need to be able to access from LDAP. So with LDAP, during its initialization, it'll actually query the security product for what version of the security product is running, as well as what fields you've added to it. And based on the version and the fields that you've added, it dynamically defines the schema that the LDAP server will recognize so that it's only the fields that are appropriate to the version that you're running. In that way, if somebody tries issuing a command to the LDAP server for fields that don't exist because it's on a different version, or that you'll get the appropriate messages, that field's not recognized, right? So after adding new field to the security products, all you need to do is restart LDAP. It'll re-query and regenerate its schema dynamically as part of that initialization and be available to you, right? That's all you need to do. You don't need to modify any config files or do anything else, just restart it. So if that's dynamic, how do you determine what is available to you, right? What schema is available for you to use, what fields are accessible. To get that information, you can issue an LDAP search operation to the server, and it will return that data to you. So here's a sample, the first one, that'll return all the configuration about the LDAP server, what's called matching rules, attributes, object classes. So on that line, you would do an LDAP search with the user ID and password, give it the host or port where the server is running, host or IP as well as the port. And then at the end, where it has CN equal sub-schema and that plus sign is what tells the server to return all of the schema information. You'll notice in the second one on the screen, we've replaced the plus sign with just attribute types. And so rather than returning everything, it returns just the attributes that are available to you. And there's a way, on the next page here, this returns just object classes. So depending on your application and how dynamic you want it to be, there's ways to query the server, get its configuration, its schema, and then dynamically use and take advantage of that. In addition to finding out about the server and the schema that's available, you can do another query, and in this example it's specific to ACF2, to get configuration information about the ACF2 that is actually behind the LDAP server. So instead of CN equal subschema, we've replaced that with CN equal config, and we've told it specifically which backend we want to query for. So in this case, we want to query for the ACF2 backend. And what's that return to us? Some of the things that get returned are listed here. First, it shows you the suffix that's configured, and it tells you about is ACF2 refresh enabled. There's a optional configuration parameter as part of adding and deleting users that LDAP can actually issue a TSO alias command in order to create alias or remove the alias as part of user provisioning or onboarding. Enable refresh for XREF records in ACF2's case, what the secondary auth IDs are that it's maintaining, and then the naming mode that the LDAP server is running in. LDAP can actually run in a couple different naming modes depending on how it's being used. Is it with your application? Is it through an identity management product? And so that alters the schema and how it looks to the outside world is based on the mode. Some of the other information that you can see, so from that screen, let me back up one screen here. From the first line where it has the suffix, right, I can now query that specific suffix and find out very detailed information about that ACF2. So in this case, we find that it's ACF2 version 15, it's running in abort mode, date format, number of invalid logons before it will suspend the ID, minimum password length, and lastly, the UID string. So using LDAP, you can actually get quite a bit of information about the security product you're interacting with, some of its configuration parameters, and have your programs and applications more dynamic interact with LDAP. So as its version goes with ACF2 top secret versions and new fields and functionality are available, that you can take advantage of it inside your applications. So one of the things that gets asked is, can I do something as basic as reset a password, right? So one of the easiest ways to do that, and this is just a very simple example, is create what's called a LDIF file. It's an LDAP data interchange format file. And inside here, you put the DN of the object you want to modify. So DN colon, and then that's the syntax to access a lid called test. And then you tell it that you want to replace a field. In this case, the field is user password. And then you say user password colon and the value that you want to apply to that user. And then with that modify command, the last parameter, -f file name, is where it reads in that file to determine what to do. And it logs on with the ID and password that's specified on the first line where you've got CN equal user ID. That's the ID that will log into the security product and then modify the user task, supplying a new password value. Right, so very, very simple way of doing things through an LDIF. It can all be done programmatically as well. Instead of through a file, you could have an application that prompts for a new password, and then behind the scenes does an LDAP modify function call to send that up to the mainframe and do that password reset. One extension we do have that is specific to top secret is related to top secret comments. On top secret commands, you can put a comment at the end of the line by putting / and then whatever text you want. And we've come up with this way through the LDAP server, being able to do the same with the command that we generate and issue to top secret, and that's through a extended control. We've documented that the control number, that great big long value on the bottom there, can be added to any of the operations, add, modify, or delete, along with the text that you want put into the comment, and we will concatenate that onto the command before issuing it. So that, again, if you want to audit why was this command done, why did it come through LDAP, you can have your application provide that information and get that tied into the command just like you would from a TSO prompt. So there's a lot of configuration values that can be set up in the LDAP server, and to try to ease some of that, we've created a configuration wizard that says here, some of the options are mutually exclusive, some are global, some are specific, and rather than everybody having to learn the valid format of the config file, this config wizard will help step you through that. You provide the values and it'll generate the config file for you. It can also be used as a migration from older versions to the current. It's able to read in existing configuration files and then create the current version, in this case R15. We'll step through a couple screens real quick here. I don't want to spend too much time on it. If people have questions, we can cover that. There's a way to create a new config file or import an existing. Right? As part of creating a new one, you pick which backends, which interfaces you want configured, and then based on that, it will create, if you look in the left, that tree is kind of the format of the config file, a global section followed by an ACF2 configuration section followed by a top secret, and by clicking on any of those tree items, you'll get prompted for the values in the window on the right-hand side. So here we've selected global. We're setting up some of the options that we want to allow. The very first thing is the host URL, right? That's which port the LDAP server is to listen on for incoming requests. SSL setup, right? So this is one thing a lot of people want and need to set up is the SSL. And in here, this tries to make it a little bit easier. Again, rather than entering all the params directly in the config file, you can enter your values here, and it'll create the appropriate config file for you. So based on IBM System SSL and the options it provides, you can either keep your digital certificates in a HFS file, which is that fourth parameter, the keyring stash file name, or you can keep them on key rings within the security products. And that's that third parameter is the TLS key ring name. And by providing a key ring name, LDAP will use it from there, and you don't have to keep anything in HFS. One of the options, the second from bottom, the TLS verify client, when the LDAP server is establishing an SSL connection, you can either have the server tell the application to use this key to encrypt data that gets sent back and forth. With the verify client, the server will perform an additional step. Before it starts encrypting and exchanging data, it'll actually request a certificate from the client application and validate that digital certificate. If the server cannot validate that certificate, that application is not allowed to actually communicate with it and use the operations provided. In that way, you can keep rogue applications from connecting where they've just created their own digital certificate because the CA for that certificate is not stored on the mainframe in order to validate it. Some of the options with ACF2, you can set UFN override. All the attributes that we've assigned, we have not restricted them to the typical 8 bytes that you know all the fields by in ACF2 and Top Secret, so we call them user-friendly names. If there's an attribute that we have in the schema that you want to change, you don't like the name that we've provided, you can actually provide a file to remap the attribute names and call them whatever you want. So that's where you'd provide the file name in order to do that override. Enable refresh, that's checked on the screen. For example, if you send up an operation that modifies the OMVS record, that's telling LDAP to automatically issue a refresh command, the modify ACF2, OMVS, to refresh that immediately if you want that done automatically. Right? If you want to wait and refresh manually or at end of day, however your security policy has defined that, you're free to do that. This is just a automated way if you want to take advantage of it. Top secret, very similar. So one last thing before the top secret, which is very similar, are messages. As part of modifying users, we've had several requests in order to kick off other automated processes to have LDAP write out a WTO. So using the pre and post processing messages for adding, modifying, and deleting users, you can define a string of your choosing that would get written as a WTO that then automation can pick up on to perform additional steps as part of onboarding or modifying or removing a user from the security database, right? If you have other applications that have their own security repositories or other things you want to do that aren't necessarily within ACF2 or Top Secret, automation can do that for you. Top Secret, that comment is very similar. You'll see the override, enable refresh. Here's some database-specific options. And again, it has the console messages at the bottom, pre and post processing for ACIDs, either add, modify, or delete. Once you've stepped through the wizard, you can tell it to generate the file. And so here it's showing you the file it's actually going to write to slapd.conf. And once that comes out, you'd FTP it back up to the mainframe and restart your LDAP server with the new parameters. There's a couple console commands that if you want to see what's going on with LDAP, you can use. There's a modify backend, database, set, and status. These all show specific groupings of information about LDAP. With status command, for example, it'll tell you what port is active, what port is LDAP listening on, what's the debug level, is SSL configured, which backends are loaded, and starting with 15.1, we also show the high APAR number that you currently have applied to your system, as well as the max region size that LDAP is currently running with, along with the amount of currently used memory within the max region size. So the last two, the max region size and the currently used, we actually just finished that feature, and we're in the process of publishing that APAR so that you can get that as part of the status command. You can dynamically modify debug on the fly. In case there's any issues, you can do a set debug 0 to turn it off, debug all to turn on all tracing, or if we need something in between, we can say, for example, all minus packets minus BER, and that gets a subset of tracing. Really, the tracing is not documented. It's not intended for us to have you use it to try to debug problems. It's meant for our CA support. So support would work with you in setting what debug level is needed to resolve a particular problem, should you have one. Real quick, I wanted to touch on the DSi server. As I said in the opening, the LDAP protocol is not a security protocol. It does have some limitations. I had mentioned like the login only gives you a good or bad, right? So in the LDAP definition of return codes, a 0 is a good and 49 is a bad. You can't tell anything else. With a rack route verify, there's actually 41 combinations of staff, rack-F, and reason codes. So we designed the DSi server to give you that information, to give you access to more than what can be supported with the LDAP protocol alone. It was designed by the Mainframe Security Group. It is a proprietary protocol, the way that it communicates from your application to the server, but we, rather than you trying to figure out how to program to that protocol, we actually provide SDKs for both C and Java, 32 and 64-bit OSs across all the operating systems. So the Unixes, Linuxes, Mainframe, as well as Windows. We support them all. There's actually 17 in total. Very similar looking to the LDAP server. You access it over TCP/IP, which can be secured using IBM System SSL. The difference with DSi is that your application builds the exact ACF2 or top secret command that you want issued, and you give it to DSi to actually issue it, right? So it's your communication server to get it from your application to the security product and get the results back as if you were sitting at a TSO prompt and actually issued it natively. Like LDAP, it doesn't have any direct access to the security file. There is no copy of anything. The sequence of calls, you would actually have to log on to the LDAP server, which will do the rack route verify, build the security environment that all subsequent commands are executed under. Those commands are executed, results returned until you log off that user. So the security product is always in control and always doing the scoping as to what a user can and can't do, so that you can't have anybody writing rogue applications out there to reset passwords for people that aren't within their scope natively. So how might you use DSi? Two ways we use it in-house. One is MSM or CSM now. It actually has a DSi server behind it, and in that way it can do rack route verify and rack route off calls regardless of the security product that is running. Chorus also uses it to perform all authentication and authorizations to the roles that you're trying to access within inside its UI. Just a couple of the functions that it has available to you: pass check, res check, execute command. These are probably the big ones that are currently used. Pass check is in essence a rack route verify. Res check is a rack route auth. And execute command is what I was talking about before, where your app builds the native ACF2 and top secret command, insert, TSS admin, whatever that is, and issues it to the security product. One of the other things DSi does provide is the ability to manage and manipulate key digital certificates along with their key rings. So you can use it to programmatically delete key rings, create, remove certificates from, add certificates to the database, or remove them from the security database. Again, as long as you are authorized to do that. There is a way to map users. Another issue a lot of clients run into is long name, short name, meaning a 7-8 byte ID to the distributed long name. Using sname, uname, or Linux name records in the security product, you can actually map back and forth from long names to short and vice versa. There's a git verse. You can determine what security product is running and what version. And the last two is to actually write a WTO from your application to the system console, and to map a digital certificate to a user ID. So behind the scenes, the cert to UID actually does a init AC call to determine which user that certificate is connected to. With DSi, it also has failover, kind of like LDAP. With it, you can have a DSi server on 2 different LPARs. Inside your application, you tell the SDK about the different IP addresses of the servers available, and just like LDAP, it will try them in sequence until it finds one and actually executes that command. So if you have multiple top secrets, for example, with a shared database, you can ensure that through one of the active systems that you can access that data. And the last piece I wanted to touch on is LDS. So one of the things that a lot of clients like to do that LDAP server doesn't provide is the ability to have changes that occur inside ACF2 and Top Secret be sent outbound to another LDAP repository. So for example, if I change my password on the mainframe, I'd really like that to be sent down to my Active Directory and change it there as well. The way that you do that with ACF2 and Top Secret is through a built-in component called LDS, which stands for LDAP Directory Services. You configure these security products as to where to send changes and what changes to send. It is 100% inside your control. The way that you do that inside ACF2 is through an LDAP node definition, and in Top Secret, same thing, a node definition in the NDT. With that, you have complete control of which commands are sent outbound, insert, change, delete, or any combination thereof. As I said, with applications, you need to support multiple schemas. If you're working with ACF2 fields and attributes versus Top Secret, LDS has mapping capability, what are called XREF records. They're cross-reference, and it allows you to map ACF2 and Top Secret fields to any field name on the other side before it actually sends it to that LDAP server. So in ACF2, for example, you would insert a record called CPU2. It's active. It does inserts and deletes. And at the end, you can see where the XREF name, in this case, maps to the same thing, name, on the remote end. But as part of the XREF, not only can you map names, but you can map data types. And we provide conversions that can take a date field that might be in the mainframe in month, day, year, turn it into year, month, day, turn bit fields in ACF2 and Top Secret, from on, off to yes, no, true, false, 0, 1, right? There's several different options as part of mapping this data and sending it out to the remote repository. Top Secret, very similar. In the NDT, you would add your LDAP node, the admin ID, admin DN that you're going to log in with, the admin password, and at the end, the XREF, we're going to map ACID name to LDAP adder name 1, right, whatever that is on the remote end. The last piece of LDS, one of the questions that always comes up is, can I send authentication off platform? And right now, no. There's concerns about that, latency, things like that, what happens if the remote directory is down. So right now, LDS is designed strictly to send add, modify, or delete commands outbound. Next question, right, that comes up is, do I lose? If you turn on the journaling component of LDS, no. We will maintain the sequence of the add, modify, deletes that have occurred in ACF2 and Top Secret, and when that remote node comes up, we will replay them in sequence to get it back in sync. Can I change passwords to AD? Yes, absolutely. AD does have some unique requirements. It has to be a certain attribute. It has to be in UTF-16 format. It has to write a couple different things. We have all that capability built into LDS, in order to make that happen for you if you want to sync passwords between those two. That's all the slides I have. I'd like to open it up to Q&A now. Vicki, if you can open up the lines.
Yes, sir. Again, if you would like to ask a question, press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. And we'll pause just for a moment to compile the Q&A roster. Your first question comes from the line of Alina Punzo.
Okay, you ready for me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Actually, I have a few questions, please. First of all, I want to know, would I be able to get a copy of this presentation?
Sure, I don't see why not.
All right, and so how would I get that? Oh, I'll send you an email. Okay.
Which we can post that with the replay in the message board.
Very nice, thank you. Okay, now I have done some limited testing with LDAP through OMVS, and I have been successful in sending a command and then getting information back. But my question is there a way to just limit the return information to just the installation data field?
So when the command that you issued was an LDAP search, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So when you did the search for the user, as part of the syntax of a search command, there is a way to tell it specifically which attributes to return. By default, it returns everything. So if you look at the, I believe the LDAP product guide, there's a utilities chapter at the end that shows the command line syntax. And what you're looking for is the attribute list parameter. That'll tell you, that'll show you where in the sequence of params to put the list of attribute names you want returned, in this case, inst data only.
Okay. I did try that, and I have not been successful at all. But so maybe I'll follow up with you offline with that. Maybe I don't have the command exactly right.
Yeah, please send me an email, and I'll help you with that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I have a few more questions, please. Now, if you, we're investigating using LDAP for, let's say, our help desk and for resetting passwords. So my question is, if you have a lot of queries being made, let's say listing the ID, doing an LDAP search and listing the ID and verifying who the user is through the installation data field. If you have several of these commands being issued by several users, are there any performance concerns?
If you're normally no. So let's when you're issuing the LDAP search as part of the search filter, you can put a filter in there that says ACF2 lid equals specific user. That turns into a single ACF2 list lid command. And so issuing that one list for one specific user, I don't think you'll ever even see it.
Okay, we're top secret shop.
Okay, so same thing. It'll just turn into a list ACID for that one specific ACID. So in the search filter, you just do TSS ACID equal and the ACID value, and it would just list the one. It wouldn't do any masking or wildcarding or anything, and it's not going to incur any overhead that you're ever going to see. Okay, great.
Now, in our case, we like I said, we want to make a query to top secret to LDAP, to get the PIN number of the associate from the installation data field. Now, they're going to be, I don't have the specifics, but and then also to reset the user's ID via a web interface, and not rather than using CICS. So, from what I just described, do they have to use the DSI server?
Like
for web interface?
So No, it doesn't have to be. I think you've got several options. Why don't we set up a call to go through what you're doing? We can go through all the options and get you down the right path.
Okay, Mitchell, that would be excellent. I really appreciate that. All right, so I will reach out to you then.
Okay, no problem.
We can go from there. And that's all I have, and thank you so much. It was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
And your next question comes from the line of Amy Blass.
Yes, Amy.
Amy Blass, your line is open. So there's no other questions at this time then.
Okay. I do see in the Q&A that there's just a couple of questions here. There is actually one from Amy that they've had some issues trying to query for user-defined fields via LDAP. If you can drop me an email, Amy, with a phone number, I can give you a call. We'll go through any problems you might have. And if you can let me know if you've got any issues open with support that I can review and be aware of before I call you, then maybe we can get you moving along on that. There was another question about can you use a query to LDAP and export the results to an Excel file. Currently, there's nothing that will export it directly to an Excel file that I'm aware of. The only output from like a command line utility is going to export it to LDIF format. If you wanted it to Excel programmatically, you could write an app to issue a query, get the data back, and write it out as a CSV, but there's nothing that comes with the LDAP server out of the box to do that. And there's one other question about can LDAP use masking? In reference to the LDAP can't use logical operators such as and or not. Where the native security product allows us to do masking, in ACF2 list like or TSS, list ACID, ACID prefix, or ACID type, and who has, any of the commands that have the ability natively to do masking, we take advantage of anywhere we can. Rather than listing all the data and then having LDAP filter out what is applicable to the mask. So yes, we do use masking where we can. Otherwise, LDAP will get all the data and filter it based on the mask that is provided. Let's see. A couple other questions are coming in here. When setting up an outbound LDAP node in TSS, this is for LDS, is this handled by the top secret LDAP started task, or is another started task required? LDS is a subtask to top secret, so no, there is no other started task that needs to be set up and maintained. You would define the LDAP node in LDAP in ACF2 or top secret, and as soon as you activate it, that subtask will dynamically start and send out those operations as configured. There's a question about getting a copy of the presentation. As it was stated, a copy of the pres will be posted on the user group site, so everybody can get a copy from there. Oops. And one last question I have is, can digital certificates be stored in and retrieved from LDAP server? Right now, LDAP does not, LDAP doesn't store any data. It's just allowing you to access the data that's in ACF2 and top secret. At this time, certificates are the only thing that LDAP cannot import or export from the security products. If that is a requirement today, there is a way to use DSi to accomplish that, but LDAP does not support that yet. And that's all the questions. Do you have any other on the line, Vicki?
No, sir, there's no other questions at this time.
Okay. Carlos, any closing comments?
Yeah, Mitch, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. I can tell by the number of questions we generated that it was very well received. If you'd all stay on the line for just another moment, we'll put up a very quick rating, kind of a survey of this presentation. I'd appreciate you taking your time to give your rating of this presentation. And also, if you could, contact us through the user group board. If you want, if you have an interest in other presentations, we certainly would like your input as far as what to present. We want to be, present our community with information with as much value as possible. So thank you all for attending, and please just stay on for the survey, and if there's any other issues, I guess this is the time to bring them up. Mary, can you put up the survey? Vicki, this is Carlos. Is Mary still on the line?
I am showing she is.
Okay.